Another strategy planning framework, talking about business strategy and a little bit of the history of business strategy. So I'm going to go through some strategy planning frameworks. And so this time I'm talking about PEST. Sounds terrible. The initial acronym, I can't remember what it was. I think it was ESTL or something like that, or something there, where it was not exactly worded like that, but PEST. I guess it's catchier. So PEST is a strategy evaluation framework. Very basic, very old one. And it'll give you an idea of what it takes to get into the mindset to evaluate something as complicated as strategy, business strategy, operating in a marketplace, selling to customers, competing with people. So PEST is interesting because it took a very, very, very high level, almost at the country level view. And so it pulled out and examined some very, very macro factors that could impact how a business operates. And it's a very basic framework. I'd say that a business that was just getting started with strategy planning might look at PEST and say, okay, I'm going to use PEST. We've gotten way past using PEST as an evaluation framework, but it's good to understand a very high level, like I said, almost at a country level, because the four pieces of PEST's an acronym. First, P stands for political factors. Now, what political factors would impact a business? Well, it's a lot of things. If you look at somebody like Facebook right now, could be regulation. Regulatory landscape could impact Facebook's business. And so the P, political factors, that would be something important for Facebook to continue to keep on their radar and understand how the current political environment could impact their growth plans, or how the current political environment could curtail operations, could put them out of business. Who knows? What if the worst happens? And that's a lot of what strategy planning is thinking about what's the best case? How do we get the best case? What's the most likely case? And what do we do? And what's the worst case? And how could we put any sort of plan in place for nightmare scenario? And when you think about political regulation for Facebook, they could pass a law that makes advertising the way Facebook does it, or data collection the way Facebook does it, illegal. That would be a nightmare scenario. What would Facebook do? And so that would be something that would potentially, if they were using the PEST model, they could potentially plan for that and think about what would they do? How would they continue to survive and operate in a less friendly political environment? Now the E, second letter, PE. E stands for economic factors. Well, these are all of anything in the economy, anything in the marketplace, anything in the broader sense of the economy, everything from inflation to, any of these macro factors that could, from an economic standpoint, impact a business. And I could talk for hours about all of the different economic factors, but think about the price of oil. Price of oil goes up, price of oil goes down. If you're an airline, that could change the costs of doing business, costs of your flights. Airlines like Southwest will buy at contract prices and they will get a fixed price. And they'll set that price so that now they don't have to worry about the fluctuation of oil. They pay a fixed cost no matter what the price of oil does. Whether it goes up, yes, hey, we locked in a low price. If it goes down, oh, well. But at least they have stability. And that's predictable and that's good. And so that would be an economic factor that they would take into account. Now, what's sociocultural? Could be things about the way people view data collection is a sociocultural issue, potentially, depending upon how you look at it, where the culture went from don't care about data collection to now very, very aware, very worried about data collection. But are they? Are they changing behaviors as a result? And that would be something that you would look at from a sociocultural factor. You would say, are they actually changing behaviors based on data gathering policies, being more privacy friendly or less privacy friendly? Does that change the time that a Facebook user spends on Facebook? Is there a certain segment that it does change, but for the majority, most don't care? So that's sociocultural. consideration. Is this something that we continue to care about? And finally, T, technology, something we all know and understand. How does technology impact the strategy planning process? Could a new technology enable a totally new business model for the company? Could it make your business model obsolete? Could it lead to operational efficiencies? Think automation. Think your manufacturing assembly line, being able to automate some of those and make your time to produce a car slower. You don't take as long to produce cars anymore as we used to. It's cheaper because we don't use as much labor. Sometimes quality goes up because you are using consistent manufacturing processes. And so there are impacts of technology on business models. Now, PEST turned into PESTLE. You add an L and an E. The L is legal factors. I would say it's almost the same as political, but they make a differentiation, so I'm just going to let it go. And then environmental factors, as in the environment itself. And that can mean sustainability, could mean climate change, it could be any number of different factors. And when you talk about climate change and sustainability, you're also interacting with sociocultural factors. And so each one of these is interdependent upon each other. They interact with each other in sometimes complicated ways. And so that's what a framework like PEST does, is it allows you to think about your business from a higher level and to look at the broad impacts that could be brought to your business by just these huge factors that sometimes when you're in the day-to-day of running your business, you're not thinking about political factors. You're not thinking about regulations. You're not thinking about the broader economy. You're not looking big picture and looking out there and saying, okay, what outside of the business could impact the business and change the way that I do business, could change my core strategy, could open up opportunities for me, could I use my strengths to capitalize on? What threats are out there? And how do these broad factors create threats and create opportunities? And it's this concept of planning, looking long term and thinking to yourself, okay, so as a strategist, is this something that could possibly happen? What would be the impacts of this on the business? How do I prepare the business to be ready for this? Is it probable enough to even worry about? Is this something that I should maybe monitor and think about long term? And that's a lot of strategy planning. And that's what a lot of these frameworks, even as remedial, as PEST and PESTLE, even as sort of old school, as some of these are, they put your mind into a thought process around looking at a broader picture, looking at factors that you may not be aware of, especially if you're writing code. It's really interesting to zoom out and look at the products that you're building, and you start recognizing your customers. And then you start thinking, okay, well, there are economic factors that could impact the price that we have to charge or the price that we could charge. Maybe we can charge more. There are political factors potentially on us if something comes into play from a regulatory standpoint. There are a lot of external impacts. And if you're not planning for it, if someone isn't, well, then what do? You're responding all the time. And that's not a good place for a business to be. A business needs to have plans for the most likely scenarios. Obviously, plans to try to make the best case scenario happen. That's part of strategy planning. Why do we want this particular environment? And that's really the justification for your business strategy. And understanding how you may want political factors to swing your way, and so you lobby. You may want economic factors to play well towards you. And sometimes you could be a big enough player in your marketplace that you make some of these economic factors happen. You set prices. There's a lot that very large companies can do. But very small companies are often at the whim of these larger companies who can do, and political factors, different parties coming into power and leaving power, trends, thought processes. In a lot of cases, small businesses are truly at the whims of the market. And so they need to have plans for what's most likely to happen, but what could happen, because if you don't have a whole lot of control, the only thing you can do is plan how ready you are for a particular change to happen and how well prepared you are to execute, to adapt to a changing environment. And if you haven't done planning, you may not even know it's coming. And that's how businesses go out of business. You may not know that an opportunity is coming your way, and so you may miss it. And that's how businesses fail to grow. And so that's a lot of what strategy planning is looking at using frameworks like these, looking out at the bigger picture and understanding how that's going to impact the business and how the business can adapt and take advantage of opportunities or be resilient to threats, adversity, change, all of these things that some companies aren't ready for and that push them right out of business. So strategy planning, you can hear how using a framework effectively can position a business to be more successful than its competitors because it's thought through a lot of what could happen and it's ready for it. It's built strategy. So a lot of what you do is executing strategy. And in some cases, when a crisis hits your business, think about it. Were they prepared? Was this something they had a plan for? Or did they feel like they were in firefighting mode and they were just reacting and trying to keep the ship afloat? It's the difference between a strategically minded and strategically adept company and a very tactical, reactive company. And being tactical and reactive, sometimes that's what you got. And if your execution is amazing, sometimes you can get by with that. But you can hear the benefits of strategy planning, being ready, thinking long term, and acting intentionally rather than reactively. So there's definitely some benefits to strategy planning, and that's your strategy planning mentality explained in the PEST and PESTLE framework.